The Georgia sun beat down mercilessly as the bus rumbled through the gates of Fort Benning. Private First Class Maya Chen pressed her forehead against the window, watching the sprawling military base unfold before her eyes. Rows of identical buildings, obstacle courses that looked like medieval torture devices, and ranges stretching into the distant tree line. This was it, the Army's elite sniper training program, the most grueling marksmanship course in the United States military. As the bus hissed to a stop, Maya took a deep breath. Through the dusty window she could see them, 23 recruits standing in formation, every single one of them male. Every single one of them looking like they'd been carved from granite. Broad shoulders, thick necks, arms like tree trunks. And then there was her, 5'4", 125 pounds, with a frame that her high school basketball coach had once described as bird-like. The bus door opened with a mechanical groan. "Move it, people, this ain't a vacation." A voice like grinding gravel echoed through the bus. Maya grabbed her duffel bag and stepped into the scorching heat. The humidity hit her like a physical wall, and she immediately felt sweat beginning to form on her brow. She jogged toward the formation, her boots crunching on the gravel, acutely aware of every eye turning toward her. Master Sergeant Ryan Dalton stood at the front of the formation, a mountain of a man with a shaved head and a scar running down his left cheek. His eyes, cold, gray, calculating, swept over Maya from head to toe. The assessment lasted maybe 3 seconds, but in those 3 seconds, Maya saw everything she'd been fighting against her entire life: doubt, dismissal, disbelief. "You sure you're in the right place, soldier?" Dalton's voice carried across the formation. Scattered laughter rippled through the ranks. Maya's jaw tightened, but she kept her eyes forward, her voice steady. "Yes, Master Sergeant. Private First Class Maya Chen, reporting as ordered, Master Sergeant." "Chen," Dalton repeated, consulting his clipboard. "Says here you scored expert marksman in basic. That right?" "Yes, Master Sergeant." "Also says you're 125 pounds." He looked up from the clipboard. "The Barrett M82 rifle weighs 30 pounds. That's nearly a quarter of your body weight. You understand what you're signing up for here?" "Yes, Master Sergeant." A voice from the formation, loud enough to be heard but quiet enough to maintain plausible deniability, cut through the tension. "She's too weak to even lift the damn thing, let alone shoot it." More laughter. Maya's eyes flicked briefly toward the source. A tall, muscular corporal with a Ranger tab on his shoulder and a cocky smirk on his face. His name tape read, Kane. He stood with the casual confidence of someone who'd already proven himself in combat, someone who had nothing left to prove and everything to protect. Corporal Derek Kane had deployed twice to Afghanistan, earned a Bronze Star, and reportedly had 17 confirmed kills. He was the program's golden boy, the standard against which all others would be measured. And he was looking at Maya like she was a mosquito at a barbecue, annoying, out of place, and destined to be swatted away. "Silence in the ranks." Dalton's voice cracked like a whip. The laughter died instantly. He turned back to Maya, his expression unreadable. "You'll bunk in Building 7. Tomorrow, 500 hours, we begin assessments. I suggest you get a good night's sleep, Private. You're going to need it." He paused, then added, almost as an afterthought, "If you want to quit, now's the time. No shame in it. This program has a 70% attrition rate for men. I've never trained a woman through to completion." Maya met his eyes directly. "I'm not here to quit, Master Sergeant." "We'll see about that." Dismissed. As the formation broke up, Maya shouldered her duffel and headed toward Building 7. She could feel the stares burning into her back, hear the whispered comments that weren't quite whispered enough. "Give her a week max. What's the Army thinking, sending her here? Diversity quota bullshit. She'll wash out after the first ruck march." Maya kept walking, her face a mask of calm determination. She'd heard it all before, in high school when she'd tried out for the rifle team. In basic training, when she'd outshot half her platoon and they'd called it beginner's luck. From her own recruiter, who gently suggested she might be better suited for administration or intelligence work. What none of them knew, what none of them could know, was that Maya Chen had been shooting since she was 12 years old. Her father, a retired Army Ranger turned rancher, had taught her everything: breath control, trigger discipline, wind reading, range estimation. While other girls her age were at the mall, Maya had been lying in the Montana dirt, putting rounds through prairie dog holes at 600 yards. She'd grown up hearing that she was too small, too weak, too female for this world. But she'd also grown up proving them wrong, one impossible shot at a time. As Maya unpacked her gear in the empty barracks she'd arrived before her bunkmates, she pulled out a worn photograph. It showed a younger version of herself, grinning widely, holding a rifle almost as tall as she was. Standing beside her was her father, his hand on her shoulder, pride radiating from his weathered face. On the back in his handwriting were 4 words she'd memorized long ago: "Prove them wrong, sweetheart." Maya propped the photo on her footlocker, changed into her PT gear, and headed out for a run. Tomorrow, the real test would begin, and she intended to make sure that every single person who doubted her would end up speechless. What none of them understood yet was that Maya Chen's silence wasn't submission. It was the quiet before the storm. The first 2 days of sniper training were designed to break bodies and crush spirits. Maya quickly learned that Master Sergeant Dalton's reputation for ruthlessness wasn't exaggerated, it was understated. Day 1 began at 4:30 hours with a 5-mile run in full gear, followed by classroom instruction on ballistics, meteorology, and range estimation. Then came equipment familiarization, where each recruit was required to field strip, clean, and reassemble their assigned rifles while blindfolded. Maya's fingers moved with practiced precision, years of muscle memory guiding her through the process. She finished 3rd overall, behind Kane and a stocky specialist from Texas named Rodriguez. Kane had watched her with narrowed eyes, his earlier smirk fading into something harder, more calculating. He didn't like surprises, and Maya was proving to be exactly that. Day 2 brought physical training that left half the class vomiting in the Georgia heat. Fireman carries with a partner, low crawls through sand pits, and endless flutter kicks that set abdominal muscles on fire. Maya struggled with the partner carries. Her small frame meant she was paired with Private Lucas Bennett, a lanky kid from Montana who outweighed her by 80 pounds. But she gritted her teeth and pushed through, refusing to be the first to quit, refusing to give anyone the satisfaction of seeing her fail. But it was day 3, live fire day, that would either cement her place in the program or confirm every doubt that had been whispered about her. The morning air was crisp and cool as the recruits gathered at Range 47, an expansive facility with target berms stretching out to 2,000 meters. For today's exercise, they'd be shooting at 800 meters, a distance where wind, humidity, and even the shooter's heartbeat could mean the difference between a hit and a miss. Master Sergeant Dalton stood before them, his voice cutting through the pre-dawn quiet. "Gentlemen," he paused, glanced at Maya, "and lady, today you'll be firing the M107 Barrett .50 caliber rifle. Each of you gets 5 rounds. The target is a standard IPSC torso silhouette at 800 meters. In combat, this is the distance where you need to be absolutely certain of your shot. Miss here, and you've just told the enemy exactly where you are." He let that sink in, then continued, "We'll go alphabetically. That means you're up first, Kane." Corporal Derek Kane stepped forward with the swagger of a man who'd done this 100 times before. He'd been talking all morning about his confirmed kills in Kandahar, about the Taliban fighter he'd dropped at 900 meters with a headshot, about how this exercise was basic qualification shit compared to real combat. Kane settled into the prone position, the massive Barrett rifle dwarfing even his considerable frame. The weapon was a monster, 30 pounds of steel and firepower, chambered for a round originally designed to disable vehicles. In the hands of a skilled shooter, it could reach out and touch targets at distances that seemed impossible. Maya watched carefully from her position in line, studying Kane's technique. His breathing pattern, the way he settled his shoulder into the stock, how he adjusted for the slight crosswind coming from the east. She'd learned long ago that the best education came from watching others, both their successes and their failures. Kane fired. The Barrett's report was deafening, a thunderous crack that echoed across the range. Through the spotting scope, the range safety officer called out, "Hit, center mass." 4 more shots followed in measured succession. The results: hit, 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 miss. Kane stood up, brushing dust from his uniform with theatrical casualness. 4 out of 5 at 800, he announced to no one in particular. Not bad for a warm-up. His eyes found Maya in the line. "Your turn's coming up, Chin. Let's see if you can even get the rifle on target." The alphabet worked against her. While others took their turns, some shooting well, others poorly, Maya stood and waited. Her heart rate was elevated, not from nervousness but from anticipation. This was the moment that mattered. This was where doubt would either be confirmed or shattered. Finally, Dalton called her name. "Chen, you're up." Maya walked to the firing line, acutely aware of every eye on her. The murmuring started immediately, low voices, barely concealed skepticism. "This should be interesting. Bet she can't even shoulder it properly. $20 says she doesn't hit the berm." The Barrett M107 lay on the shooting mat, looking like some kind of sci-fi weapon. Maya knelt beside it, running her hands over the familiar contours. She'd studied this rifle obsessively over the past week, memorized its specifications, watched hours of footage of expert shooters employing it. But holding it now, feeling its substantial weight, she understood why everyone doubted her. The rifle was a beast. She settled into position, working the Barrett's bipod into the dirt for stability. The stock pressed against her shoulder. She'd have a brutal bruise there by tomorrow, and she wrapped her hand around the pistol grip. Through the scope, the target seemed impossibly distant, shimmering in the heat haze that was already beginning to rise from the Georgia soil. "Need help getting comfortable, sweetheart?" Kane's voice carried across the range, dripping with condescension. "That rifle's got a kick that'll put you on your ass." Maya didn't respond. She was already in her zone, the place her father had taught her to find. The world narrowed. External sounds faded. All that existed was her, the rifle, and the target. She'd spent last night reviewing her notes while her bunkmates slept. Wind speed, 5 knots from the east. Humidity, 72%. Temperature, 68 degrees Fahrenheit and rising. Barometric pressure, 30.15 inches. At 800 meters, the .50 caliber round would drop approximately 20 feet. The crosswind would push it roughly 8 inches to the left. Maya made her adjustments, settling the crosshairs slightly high and right of center mass. Her breathing slowed, in for 4 counts, out for 4 counts. Her heart rate dropped. Finger on the trigger, she felt for that perfect moment between heartbeats. The Barrett roared. The recoil was savage, slamming into her shoulder like a mule kick. But Maya had braced properly, letting her body absorb the impact rather than fighting it. Through the scope, she watched for the impact. "Hit," the range safety officer called out. "Center mass." Maya didn't celebrate. She simply chambered another round, made a micro-adjustment for the barrel heating, and fired again. "Hit center mass." The noise on the range had died. Maya was vaguely aware of it but didn't let it distract her. 3 more rounds to go. She worked mechanically, precisely, each shot a repetition of perfect technique. Crack, hit, center mass. Crack, hit, center mass. Crack, hit, center mass. 5 shots, 5 perfect hits. Maya engaged the safety, cleared the weapon, and stood up. The range was absolutely silent. Master Sergeant Dalton lowered his binoculars slowly, his weathered face betraying nothing. Kane stood frozen, his earlier smirk completely vanished, replaced by something that looked uncomfortably like shock. Captain Sarah Rodriguez, the program's commanding officer who'd been observing from the tower, picked up her radio. "Dalton, confirm those hits." Dalton walked downrange with the spotting scope, examining the target carefully. When he returned, his voice was measured, professional. 5 rounds, 5 hits. Grouping is 4 inches. Chen just shot the best qualifying round of the day. The silence persisted for another moment, then Private Lucas Bennett started clapping. Slowly, others joined in, not everyone but enough. Kane wasn't among them. He stared at Maya with an expression she couldn't quite read. Anger, confusion, and perhaps the first stirring of respect mixed with resentment. Maya shouldered her rifle and walked back to the line, her face betraying no emotion. Inside, her heart was racing, adrenaline singing through her veins. But she'd learned long ago never to gloat, never to showboat. Let the target speak for itself. As she passed Kane, he muttered just loud enough for her to hear, "Lucky shots. 800 meters is nothing. Wait until we get to real distances." Maya didn't respond. She simply met his eyes for a brief moment, then continued walking. That evening, as the recruits cleaned their weapons in the armory, Master Sergeant Dalton approached Maya's station. She snapped to attention, but he waved her down. "As you were, Chen." He studied her for a long moment. "That was solid shooting today, but don't let it go to your head. 800 meters is just the beginning. This course gets exponentially harder from here." "I understand, Master Sergeant." "Do you?" His gray eyes bored into her. "Because here's what you need to understand. You just put a target on your back. Kane doesn't like being shown up, especially not by—" He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Someone he considers beneath him. Watch yourself." "Yes, Master Sergeant." Dalton turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing, Chen. Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" For the first time, Maya allowed herself a small smile. "My father, Master Sergeant. He's a retired ranger. He taught me that size doesn't matter if your fundamentals are perfect." Dalton's scarred face creased into something that might have been approval. "Your father taught you well. Now let's see if you can maintain that standard when we triple the distance and cut your sleep in half." As he walked away, Maya returned to cleaning her rifle. Around her, the atmosphere had shifted subtly. Some recruits now looked at her with cautious respect. Others, particularly those in Kane's circle, regarded her with thinly veiled hostility. But Maya Chen had learned something important today. She belonged here, and she was just getting started. The next 2 weeks transformed the sniper course from challenging to brutal. Master Sergeant Dalton drove them relentlessly, explaining with cold precision that enemy snipers didn't care about comfort, fatigue, or fair conditions. "The Taliban doesn't give you a good night's sleep before trying to kill you," he'd growled during pre-dawn formations. "Neither will I." Maya quickly discovered that shooting well once meant nothing. Consistency under deteriorating conditions. That was what separated real snipers from weekend target shooters. Week 3 began with the 1,200-meter qualification, but Dalton added a vicious twist. They'd earned their shooting positions through suffering. At 400 hours, the recruits assembled in full combat gear, body armor, helmets, rucksacks loaded to 50 pounds, and their 30-pound Barrett rifles. 12 miles to the range, Dalton announced. "You have 2 hours. Anyone who falls out doesn't shoot today, move out." The ruck march began in darkness, boots pounding rhythmically on the dirt road. Maya settled into the middle of the formation, trying to conserve energy. The Barrett rifle dug into her shoulder with every step, the weight seeming to increase exponentially with each passing mile. By mile 3, her shoulders were screaming. By mile 5, her legs felt like molten lead. The rucksack straps cut into her collarbones despite the padding, and she could feel blisters forming on her heels. Ahead of her, Corporal Kane set a punishing pace. He'd positioned himself near the front, and Maya realized with growing anger that he kept accelerating whenever she got close. This wasn't about physical training anymore. It was about breaking her. "Pick it up, Chen." Kane called back, his voice maddeningly fresh. My grandmother moves faster than you, and she's been dead 3 years. Laughter rippled through his group, 4 other recruits who'd formed a loyal circle around the decorated corporal. They fed off his cruelty like pilot fish around a shark. Maya's vision began to blur. Salt from sweat stung her eyes. Every breath burned in her chest. Her body was sending clear signals. Stop, rest, quit, just fall out. Nobody would blame you. You've already proven you can shoot. But quitting wasn't in her DNA. She thought about her father, about the summers spent in Montana's unforgiving terrain, hunting elk in the mountains. Pain is your body's opinion, Maya, he'd told her when she was 14, gasping at high altitude. You don't have to agree with it. Mile 8, her hands had gone numb from gripping the rifle. Mile 9, she'd stopped feeling her feet entirely, which was probably a blessing. Mile 10, Kane accelerated again, and this time 2 recruits fell behind, unable to match his pace. Private Lucas Bennett appeared beside her, his breathing labored but steady. He's trying to break you specifically, Lucas whispered. Don't let him. I won't, Maya managed through gritted teeth. Mile 11. The sun was rising now, and with it came George's oppressive humidity. Maya's uniform was soaked through. Her vision had narrowed to a tunnel focused on the boots in front of her. Left foot, right foot, breathe, repeat. Mile 12. The range appeared like a mirage through the heat shimmer. Maya staggered across the finish line with 4 minutes to spare. 15 recruits had made it. 8 had fallen out, including 2 of Kane's supporters who'd overextended trying to keep his blistering pace. Kane looked disgustingly fresh. He'd barely broken a sweat. Well, he said, watching Maya collapse onto her knees. Didn't think you'd make it, Chen. Color me surprised. Dalton's voice cut across the range. On your feet, people. Weapons check in 5 minutes, then we shoot. Your bodies are tired. Good. That's the point. In combat, you don't get to be rested and comfortable. You shoot when you're exhausted, scared, and everything hurts. That's when your training either holds or fails. Maya struggled to her feet, her legs trembling violently. She tried to lift the Barrett to begin her weapons check, but her arms wouldn't cooperate. The rifle slipped from her nerveless fingers, clattering onto the concrete firing platform. Equipment malfunction, Kane announced loudly. Chen dropped her weapon. All eyes turned toward her. Maya bent to retrieve the rifle, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely grip it. This was worse than embarrassing. Dropping your weapon was a cardinal sin in military culture. It suggested carelessness, incompetence, weakness. Chen, you good to shoot? Dalton's voice was neutral, but there was an undercurrent of concern. Yes, Master Sergeant. Maya forced the words out, even as her body screamed in protest. The first shooting position went to Kane. He settled behind his Barrett with practiced ease, his body having recovered from the ruck march within minutes. Through the spotting scope, Maya watched him fire 5 rounds at 1,200 meters. 3 hits, 2 misses. Respectable given the conditions and fatigue factor. Next up was Specialist Rodriguez from Texas. 2 hits, 3 misses. Private Bennett, 3 hits, 2 misses. Then Maya's name was called. She approached the firing line with dread pooling in her stomach. Her arms felt like rubber. Her heart was still racing from the march, making it nearly impossible to find that calm space between heartbeats where perfect shots lived. She settled into position, and immediately her muscles began cramping. Through the scope, the target at 1,200 meters wavered and danced. Her crosshairs refused to steady, bouncing erratically with each labored breath. Maya tried to control her breathing, but exhaustion had shattered her usual discipline. She fired, miss. The round impacted 2 feet left of target. Miss, the range safety officer called out dispassionately. Maya's jaw clenched. She chambered another round, tried to slow her racing pulse. Focus, breathe, calculate, but her brain felt foggy, her thoughts sluggish. Wind speed, she couldn't remember. Elevation adjustment, The numbers wouldn't come. She fired again, miss high this time. Miss. From somewhere behind her, she heard Kane's voice, barely disguised as a cough. Choke artist. Anger flared in Maya's chest, hot and immediate. She wanted to turn around to confront him, to scream that he deliberately sabotaged her by setting that brutal pace. But that's exactly what he wanted, an emotional reaction, proof that she couldn't handle the pressure. Third shot. She rushed it, knowing she was rushing it but unable to stop herself. Miss, right side of the target. Miss. Fourth shot. Her finger jerked the trigger instead of squeezing smoothly. Miss. Miss. One round left. Maya's hands were shaking visibly now. Through the scope, she could see the target mocking her, 1,200 meters of failure. Every doubt she'd fought against, every skeptical voice that said she didn't belong here, they were all being proven right in this moment. Her father's photograph flashed in her mind. Prove them wrong, sweetheart. But how could she prove them wrong when she couldn't even steady the rifle? Fifth shot. She tried to salvage something from this disaster. But the round went wide, missing the target entirely. Miss Chen, you're 0 for 5. Clear your weapon and step back. The walk from the firing line back to the group felt like a death march. Maya kept her eyes forward, refusing to look at anyone, especially Kane. But she could feel his satisfaction radiating across the range like heat from a furnace. That evening, after equipment cleaning and a miserable dinner she could barely choke down, Maya sat alone on her bunk. The barracks were nearly empty. Most recruits had gone to the PX or were making phone calls home. She stared at the photograph of her and her father, feeling the weight of failure crushing down on her shoulders. She'd gone from the best qualifying round at 800 meters to complete failure at 1,200. The message was clear. She couldn't handle the physical demands. She was too weak, too small, too female for this program. Her phone sat on the footlocker, calling to her. Just one call home. Just one conversation with her father to hear him say it was okay to quit, that she'd proven her point already, that there was no shame in walking away. Maya picked up the phone. Her father answered on the second ring. Maya, everything okay? The concern in his voice almost broke her. She opened her mouth to tell him about the ruck march, the failed qualification, the humiliation. But what came out was, Dad, I don't know if I can do this. A long pause, then tell me what happened. She did everything. The 12-mile march, Kane's sabotage, her shaking hands, the 5 consecutive misses. When she finished, silence filled the line. Finally, her father spoke, his voice carrying the weight of 30 years as an Army Ranger. Maya, do you remember the first time you missed a shot? You were 12 years old, trying to hit a prairie dog at 400 yards. I remember. She'd been devastated. And what did I tell you? Maya closed her eyes, remembering that Montana afternoon. You said that missing teaches you more than hitting. You said that failure is just information, data about what needs to change. Exactly, so what's the data telling you now? Maya thought carefully. That I can't maintain shooting fundamentals when I'm physically exhausted, that my recovery time after exertion is too long, that I let Kane get in my head. Good, that's not failure, sweetheart, that's a training plan. Now, what are you going to do about it? The question hung in the air. Maya glanced at her watch, 19:30 hours. She could spend the evening wallowing in self-pity, or she could take action. I'm going to start training differently, she said slowly, the plan forming as she spoke. Earlier wake-ups, shooting drills after exhaustion exercises, mental conditioning to block out distractions. She could hear the smile in her father's voice. There's my girl. The Maya I raised doesn't quit when things get hard. She gets creative. She outworks everyone. She proves them wrong. After hanging up, Maya sat in the empty barracks for another moment. Then she stood, changed into her PT gear and headed out into the Georgia night. If exhaustion was her enemy, she'd learned to make it her ally. At 400 the next morning, Master Sergeant Dalton arrived for formation and found Maya already awake, drenched in sweat, having completed a 5-mile run followed by hundreds of push-ups and flutter kicks. She stood at attention as he approached. "Chen, what are you doing?" "Training, Master Sergeant." Dalton studied her for a long moment, his scarred face unreadable. "You failed yesterday's qualification." "Yes, Master Sergeant, it won't happen again." Something flickered in Dalton's gray eyes, not quite approval, but perhaps recognition. He'd seen this before, the moment when a soldier either broke or forged themselves into something harder. "See that it doesn't," he said quietly, then walked away. From a second-floor window, Corporal Kane watched the exchange, his expression darkening. Maya Chen wasn't breaking, and that, he was beginning to realize, was a problem. Maya's self-imposed training regimen became legendary in the barracks. Every morning at 3:30 hours, 30 minutes before official formation, she was already running, already pushing her body past comfortable limits. After evening equipment maintenance, while others relaxed or slept, she practiced dry-fire drills and breathing exercises until her arms trembled with fatigue, then practiced some more. Private Lucas Bennett noticed first. The lanky Montanan had grown up on a ranch not unlike Maya's family property, and he recognized the particular brand of stubborn determination that only rural life could forge. On the fourth morning of Maya's private torture session, he simply appeared beside her at the pull-up bars. "Mind if I join?" he asked. Maya mid-pull-up could only nod. They didn't talk much that first morning. Lucas matched her workout routine rep for rep, though his longer frame gave him advantages on some exercises while her compact build favored others. When they finished, both gasping and drenched in sweat, Lucas finally spoke. "You're training wrong," he said bluntly. Maya bristled. "Excuse me." "Don't get defensive. I mean the shooting, not the PT." Lucas pulled a small notebook from his pocket, the kind serious shooters carried to log environmental conditions and performance data. "I've been watching you on the range. You've got better fundamentals than anyone here, including Kane, but you're fighting your body instead of working with it." "What do you mean?" Lucas flipped open his notebook to a page covered in detailed observations. "At 800 meters, your grouping was 4 inches, textbook perfect. At 1200 after the ruck march, you went 0.45. But here's the thing, your technique didn't change. Your body changed. You were trying to force the same shooting position that works when you're fresh, but your muscles were compromised." He sketched quickly in the notebook. "My granddad taught me something about shooting when you're tired or cold or uncomfortable. You don't fight it, you adapt your position to accommodate it. Adjust your bipod height, change your breathing pattern, modify your grip pressure. The rifle doesn't care if you're tired. Physics doesn't care, so you have to work within new parameters." Maya stared at the sketches, her tactical mind immediately grasping the implications. "You're saying I should have different shooting positions for different physical states." "Exactly, and I can help you develop them if you want. I'm not as good a shot as you naturally, but I've been hunting in brutal conditions my whole life. 30 below zero temperatures, wind that'll knock you sideways, shooting after hiking 10 miles through snow." He shrugged. "Adaptation is survival where I'm from." It was the beginning of an unexpected partnership. Over the following week, Lucas and Maya began training together during every spare moment. He taught her techniques his grandfather had passed down, how to use terrain features to stabilize a shot when your muscles were shaking, how to control breathing when your lungs were burning from exertion, how to make micro-adjustments to maintain accuracy when perfect form was impossible. In return, Maya shared her mathematical approach to ballistics. Lucas was an instinctive shooter, reading wind and elevation through feel and experience. Maya showed him how to verify those instincts with precise calculations, how to account for variables he'd never considered. Coriolis effect at extreme ranges, barometric pressure changes, even the Earth's rotation affecting bullet trajectory over distances exceeding 2,000 meters. You calculate all this in your head? Lucas asked one evening, watching her work through a complex ballistics problem without paper. My mom's a physics professor, Maya explained. I grew up doing trajectory calculations at the dinner table instead of talking about school gossip. Weird childhood, says the guy who learned geometry by calculating bullet drop on elk. Lucas grinned, fair point. Their collaboration didn't go unnoticed. During the 1,600-meter qualification, a test that would eliminate nearly a third of the remaining candidates, Maya and Lucas both performed exceptionally. Maya shot 445, her only miss a result of a sudden wind gust that caught everyone off guard. Lucas matched her score. But it was Corporal Kane's performance that surprised everyone. He shot 545, a perfect score that he celebrated with theatrical enthusiasm, making sure everyone knew he'd outperformed Maya. Looks like Chen's magic ran out, Kane announced loudly during equipment cleaning. 445, that's pedestrian at best. Maybe stick to shorter ranges, sweetheart. You know, where your limitations don't show as much. Maya didn't respond. She'd learned that Kane fed on reactions, and silence was the best way to deflate his ego. But Lucas wasn't as practiced in restraint. She outscored 12 guys today, Kane, including 3 of your fan club. Kane's eyes narrowed. You defending her now, Bennett? Cute. Didn't realize we were running a romance novel here. Maybe you two should get a room instead of wasting everyone's time pretending she belongs in this program. The barracks went silent. It was one thing to mock Maya's performance. It was another to cross into outright disrespect. Master Sergeant Dalton appeared in the doorway as if summoned by the tension. Kane, my office, now. As Kane stalked out, Dalton's eyes swept the room. The rest of you listen carefully. I don't care who you like or don't like. I don't care about your personal dramas or hurt feelings. I care about one thing: can you make the shot when it matters? Chen can. Bennett can. Some of you can't, and you'll wash out soon enough. Focus on your own performance, not tearing down others. He left, and the barracks slowly returned to normal activity. Maya continued cleaning her rifle, but Lucas caught the slight smile on her face. What? He asked. Dalton defended me, sort of. He defended competence, but yeah, that's progress. That evening, after lights out, Lucas whispered from his bunk across the room. Hey, Maya, you hear about the Extreme Range Challenge? Maya had heard rumors, but nothing official. What about it? Captain Rodriguez mentioned it during her lecture today. Apparently, it's optional during final qualifications. 3,200 meters, maybe farther. Only 3 people have ever completed it in the program's history. One of them was Dalton himself, back when he was going through the course. Why are you telling me this? Lucas was quiet for a moment. Because I've been watching you work ballistics problems. Last night, during study time, you were calculating trajectories at 3,500 meters. You weren't just doing homework, you were planning something. Maya's silence was confirmation enough. You're going to attempt it, aren't you? The Extreme Range Challenge. I'm considering it. Maya, that's insane. The failure rate is over 90%, even for the best shooters. And if you fail publicly on something that ambitious, it could hurt your final ranking. You'd be better off. Better off playing it safe, Maya interrupted quietly. Better off not making waves. Better off proving I'm competent but not exceptional, so people feel comfortable around me. Lucas sighed. No, I guess not. That's not who you are. My whole life, people have told me what I should settle for. What's realistic? What's appropriate for someone my size, my gender, my anything? I didn't come here to be adequate, Lucas. I came here to be undeniable. 3,200 meters is a hell of a way to make a statement. That's exactly why I'm doing it. The next morning during classroom instruction, Captain Sarah Rodriguez, a former Marine sniper and the program's only female instructor, announced the final qualification structure. Standard distances would range from 800 to 2,400 meters, with passing scores required at each increment. Then she paused, her eyes scanning the remaining 17 candidates. There's also an optional extreme range challenge, 3,248 meters, beyond standard military engagement distances. The shot requires mastery of advanced ballistics, perfect reading of environmental conditions, and honestly, a bit of luck. In 15 years of running this program, only 3 candidates have successfully completed it. She let that sink in. The challenge is optional and will not negatively impact your final ranking if you attempt it and fail. However, success carries significant weight in your final evaluation and in building your reputation as a sniper. Anyone interested should begin preparing now. We'll conduct the Extreme Range Challenge on qualification day after standard distances are complete. Kane's hand shot up immediately. "Ma'am, I'd like to attempt the challenge." Noted Corporal, anyone else? The room was silent. 3,200 meters was nearly 2 miles. At that distance, the bullet would travel for almost 4 seconds, dropping over 35 feet, drifting potentially 15 feet or more in crosswinds. The math alone was staggering. Maya kept her hand down. She'd learned from watching Kane that announcing intentions gave him time to sabotage or undermine. Better to prepare in silence and surprise everyone when it mattered. But Captain Rodriguez's eyes found Maya's and something passed between them. A moment of understanding, woman to woman, trailblazer to potential successor. Rodriguez had been the first woman to complete Marine sniper training. She knew exactly what Maya was facing: the extra scrutiny, the impossible standards, the constant pressure to be perfect because adequate would never be enough. After class, Rodriguez asked Maya to stay behind. "Chen, I saw your ballistics exam scores. 98%. The highest in this class and one of the highest I've seen in 5 years of teaching." "Thank you, ma'am." Rodriguez studied her carefully. "I also saw your performance at 1,200 meters after the ruck march, 045. Care to explain the discrepancy?" Maya met her gaze directly. "I tried to shoot the same way when exhausted as when fresh. I learned from that mistake and adjusted my training accordingly. It won't happen again, ma'am." "Good answer." Rodriguez walked to the classroom window, looking out over the ranges. "I'm going to tell you something I don't share with most candidates. When I went through Marine sniper training, I was the only woman in a class of 32 men. Know how many of them thought I belonged there?" "None of them, ma'am." "Wrong. One of them believed in me, my shooting partner, a guy from Oklahoma who'd grown up with 3 sisters and didn't have his ego wrapped up in proving male superiority. He helped me when I struggled, covered my weaknesses while I developed my strengths, and never asked for anything in return except that I do the same for him." She turned back to Maya. "I saw you and Bennett training together at 400 yesterday." Maya tensed, unsure if she was about to be reprimanded. "That's not a criticism, Chen. That's smart. This program likes to pretend it's all individual achievement, but the reality is that snipers work in pairs in the field, spotter and shooter. You need someone who can see what you can't, compensate for your blind spots, and push you to be better." Rodriguez's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Hold on to that partnership. You're going to need it for what's coming." "Yes, ma'am." As Maya turned to leave, Rodriguez added one more thing. "And Chen, if you're considering the Extreme Range Challenge, and I suspect you are, don't let fear of failure stop you. The only way to shatter expectations is to attempt the impossible. Trust your math, trust your training, and when the moment comes, trust yourself." Walking back to the barracks, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. For the first time since arriving at Fort Benning, she didn't feel alone. She had Lucas, who believed in her abilities without qualification. She had Dalton's grudging respect. And she had Rodriguez, who understood exactly what this journey meant. The extreme range challenge was no longer just a consideration. It was inevitable. Week 6 marked the program's halfway point, and the attrition rate had been merciless. Of the original 24 candidates, only 14 remained. The washouts had come from various failures: physical injuries, mental breakdowns, consistent poor performance, and in 2 cases, voluntary withdrawal after realizing the immense gap between ego and actual capability. Maya had climbed to 3rd place in the overall rankings. Corporal Kane held 1st position with an aggregate score of 92% across all qualifications. Specialist Rodriguez from Texas occupied 2nd place at 89%. Maya sat at 87%, with Private Lucas Bennett close behind at 85%. The rankings were posted outside the company headquarters, updated weekly, impossible to ignore. Kane made sure everyone saw them, frequently standing beside the board with his arms crossed, a smug expression plastered across his face. 3rd place, he'd announced at breakfast that morning. Not bad for a diversity hire. Of course, there's 3rd place and then there's 1st place. Guess which one actually matters in combat? Maya had learned to let his comments slide off like water on glass, but the rankings bothered her for a different reason, not because she was 3rd, but because she knew she was capable of better. The 1,200-meter disaster still haunted her aggregate score like a ghost. Everything changed during the 2,000-meter night qualification. Master Sergeant Dalton briefed them at 2100 hours, his scarred face illuminated by red-filtered flashlights that preserved night vision. Gentlemen and Chen, tonight you'll discover that darkness is its own kind of enemy. You'll be shooting at 2,000 meters with night vision optics, in temperatures that'll drop to 45 degrees, with wind conditions that change by the minute. He paused, letting the difficulty sink in. Target is standard IPSC silhouette, but here's the twist. It'll only be illuminated for 30 seconds per shooter. You get 3 rounds in that window. Miss all 3 and you fail this evolution. Questions? There were none. Only the quiet dread that came with knowing you were about to be tested at the edge of your capabilities. They drew lots for shooting order. Maya drew number 7, placing her in the middle of the pack. Kane drew number 3. The night was moonless, which made the darkness absolute beyond the range's limited lighting. Through night vision optics, the world became an eerie green landscape of shadows and varying shades of darkness. The target at 2,000 meters was invisible until illuminated, and even then it would appear as little more than a ghostly silhouette. The first candidate, a quiet specialist from Minnesota, managed 1 hit out of 3 rounds. Respectable. The second candidate, one of Kane's supporters, went 0 for 3. He walked back from the line with his head down, knowing he'd just failed. Then came Kane. He approached the firing line with his usual swagger, settling behind the Barrett with practiced ease. The target illuminated, a glowing green shape in the distance. Kane fired, hit. Second shot, hit. He was lining up his 3rd shot when suddenly the wind shifted, a gust that everyone felt, cold air sweeping across the range. Kane fired anyway, miss. 2 out of 3. Still a passing score, but not the dominance he'd expected. As he walked back, his jaw was clenched tight with frustration. 3 more shooters went with mixed results. Then Maya's name was called. She moved to the firing line, her heart rate already dropping into that calm zone she'd learned to access. The night air was indeed cold. She could feel it on her exposed skin, different from the day's warmth. Cold air meant denser air, which meant different ballistic properties. Maya had spent the last hour while others shot doing something most candidates ignored. She'd been taking meticulous notes. Temperature drops, wind direction changes, humidity fluctuations. She'd watched each shooter's impacts, mentally calculating the differences between their aim points and actual hits. The target illuminated. 30 seconds. Maya's mind raced through calculations she'd practiced 1,000 times. Cold air density factor, check. Current wind speed, she'd been monitoring the flags downrange, 6 knots from the northwest, shifting. Elevation adjustment for 2,000 meters, temperature compensation, even the slight pressure change from earlier in the day. But there was something else, something subtle that Maya had noticed watching the other shooters. The wind wasn't consistent at ground level versus higher altitudes. There was shear, different wind speeds at different heights along the bullet's trajectory. Most shooters were compensating for ground-level wind only, which explained why several shots had drifted more than expected. Maya made her adjustments, accounting for the wind shear based on her observations. First shot, steady breath, smooth trigger press. The Barrett roared, flame erupting from the muzzle brake. Through the night vision scope, Maya watched the impact, dead center. Hit center mass, the range safety officer called. 15 seconds left. Maya chambered another round, recalculated quickly. The wind had shifted slightly. She'd felt it on her face. Adjusted her aim, point 1 click right. Second shot, another hit. Hit center mass. 10 seconds remaining. Most shooters would rush the third shot, anxious to beat the clock. Maya forced herself to slow down, to breathe, to think. The temperature had dropped another degree in the last few minutes. She could feel it. Minimal adjustment needed, but she made it anyway. 5 seconds, 4, 3. Third shot. Hit center mass. The target went dark. Maya saved her weapon and stood, her face betraying nothing, but inside her heart was hammering with exhilaration. 343 in conditions that had defeated half the candidates. As she walked back to the group, she passed Kane. His expression was dark, unreadable. "Lucky wind calls," he muttered. Maya stopped, turned to face him directly. It wasn't luck. It was observation, calculation, and adaptation. You know, the things snipers are supposed to do. It was the first time she directly confronted him, and the effect was electric. Other candidates' eyes widened. Even Master Sergeant Dalton, standing nearby, raised an eyebrow. Kane stepped closer, trying to use his size to intimidate. "You think you're hot shit now. One good night shoot doesn't make you a sniper, Chen. Real snipers prove themselves in combat, not on a controlled range." "Then I guess your Bronze Star doesn't count either," Maya replied calmly. "Since apparently range performance doesn't matter. Or does it only not matter when someone outperforms you?" Lucas Bennett coughed to cover a laugh. Several other candidates weren't as subtle. Open grins appeared on faces. Kane's jaw worked, his fists clenching. For a moment, it looked like he might actually take a swing at her, but Master Sergeant Dalton's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "Kane, Chen, that's enough. Kane, you're next on duty roster for latrine cleaning. Chen, outstanding shooting. Next candidate, you're up." As Maya moved back to the observation area, Lucas leaned over and whispered, "That was incredibly satisfying to watch, but you just made him really angry." "He was already angry," Maya whispered back. "I just stopped pretending I didn't notice." The remaining candidates shot with varying degrees of success. By the end of the evolution, only 5 shooters had gone 3-4-3. Maya was one of them. Kane was not. The updated rankings were posted the next morning. Maya had jumped to second place, now only 2 percentage points behind Kane. The margin was close enough that the final qualifications could easily swing the rankings in either direction. Kane stood at the board for a long time, staring at Maya's name right below his. When he finally turned around, his expression had changed from arrogant confidence to something harder, more dangerous. This wasn't a game anymore. His reputation was at stake. That afternoon, during a rare break, Captain Rodriguez approached Maya at the classroom building. "Walk with me, Chen." They strolled toward the ranges, the Georgia sun beating down mercilessly. Rodriguez didn't speak for a long moment, then finally said, "Last night's performance was exceptional. That wind shear calculation. Most shooters with 5 years of experience wouldn't have caught that." Thank you, ma'am. It's also going to paint an even bigger target on your back. Kane's got supporters in the old boys network who don't like seeing the natural order disrupted. They'll be watching your final qualifications very carefully, looking for any excuse to claim your success is anomalous or assisted. Maya felt a chill despite the heat. Are you saying the evaluation won't be fair, ma'am? I'm saying it'll be fair, but it'll also be scrutinized to a degree that Kane's performance won't be. Welcome to breaking barriers, Chen. Every woman who comes after you will have an easier path because you're walking it first, but that doesn't make your journey any less difficult. Rodriguez stopped walking, turned to face Maya directly. I heard you confronted Kane last night. Yes, ma'am, I probably shouldn't have. Don't apologize. He needed to hear it, and honestly, it was long overdue. But understand what you've done. You've moved from being an oddity he could dismiss to being a legitimate threat he needs to eliminate. Kane's entire self-image is built on being the best. You're challenging that, and some men don't handle that challenge gracefully. What should I do, ma'am? Rodriguez smiled, and it was fierce. What you've been doing, outshoot him. At the final qualifications, when it matters most, when everyone's watching, be undeniably better. Not equal, better. Because equal still gives them room to explain it away. But if you dominate, if you shoot scores that can't be dismissed or minimized, you win. Not just for yourself, but for every woman who will wear this uniform after you. And the extreme range challenge. Ah, Rodriguez's smile widened. I was wondering when you'd ask about that directly. Yes, I know you're planning to attempt it. Kane announced his intention publicly, which means he's committed. If you announce yours, he'll spend the next 2 weeks trying to sabotage your preparation. My advice, keep it quiet. Surprise everyone. The best responses to doubt are the ones nobody sees coming. That evening, Maya and Lucas sat in the empty classroom, surrounded by ballistics charts, weather data, and environmental condition logs. They'd been granted permission to use the space for extra study, and they were making the most of it. 3,248 meters, Lucas said, staring at the calculations covering 3 whiteboards. The bullet will be in flight for 3.7 seconds. It'll drop 36 feet. Wind drift at 10 knots could push it 18 feet laterally. Temperature, humidity, even the Coriolis effect from Earth's rotation. Everything matters at this distance. Maya studied the numbers with fierce concentration. And we have to account for all of it, in real time, with probably only minutes to make the shot. Do you really think you can do this? Maya looked at her shooting partner, her unexpected ally, the person who'd believed in her when it would have been easier to join the doubters. Honestly, I don't know. The math says it's possible. My fundamentals say it's possible. But there's a reason only 3 people have ever succeeded. So why attempt it? Because possible is enough, and because I didn't come this far to play it safe at the finish line. She turned back to the calculations. Let's run the scenarios again. Every possible weather condition, every wind pattern, every variable we can imagine. If I'm going to attempt the impossible, I'm going to be so prepared that luck becomes irrelevant. They worked until 200 hours, long after lights out, running scenario after scenario until Maya could calculate 3,200-meter adjustments in her sleep. Outside, through the classroom window, Corporal Derek Kane walked past, saw the lights on, and stopped. He watched Maya and Lucas working, saw the extreme range calculations on the whiteboards, and his expression turned dark. So she was going to attempt it after all. Fine. He'd just have to make sure his attempt succeeded and hers failed, however necessary. The final battle lines had been drawn. 2 weeks remained until final qualifications, and the atmosphere in the barracks had transformed from competitive to cutthroat. Every candidate felt the pressure. This was where careers were defined, where reputations were forged or shattered, where months of suffering either paid dividends or amounted to nothing. Master Sergeant Dalton intensified the training to levels that bordered on sadistic. 2,400-meter shots became the new baseline. conducted under progressively worse conditions. Rain, extreme heat, simulated combat stress with explosions and smoke grenades detonating nearby, and deliberate equipment malfunctions they had to diagnose and correct mid-qualification. Maya performed consistently well, maintaining her second-place ranking by the slimmest of margins. Kane remained in first, but his lead had shrunk to less than 1 percentage point. Mathematically, the final qualifications would determine everything. The tension between them had evolved from hostile to nearly volcanic. Kane no longer made snide comments. He'd graduated to active interference. During one range session, Maya discovered her rifle's scope had been deliberately loosened, requiring complete re-zeroing that cost her precious training time. She couldn't prove Kane had done it, but everyone knew. Lucas confronted him directly. "You're scared of her." Kane had laughed, but it rang hollow. "Scared of Chen? Please. I'm just tired of watching standards get lowered to accommodate." "Standards aren't being lowered," Lucas interrupted. "She's meeting them, exceeding them. And that terrifies you because it means all your talk about women not being capable is exposed as the insecure bullshit it always was." The confrontation nearly came to blows before Sergeant Dalton intervened, issuing both candidates extra duty and a stern warning about maintaining discipline. But the real psychological warfare began during the 2,400-meter evolution. It was a perfect training day, clear skies, mild winds, ideal shooting conditions. The evolution required hitting targets at the program's maximum standard distance, the longest range they'd qualify at before the optional extreme range challenge. Everyone knew this was the final proving ground before Judgment Day. Kane shot first, as always making sure everyone watched his performance. He settled behind his Barrett with absolute confidence, running his calculations with practiced efficiency. 5 shots allocated. He fired methodically, each shot accompanied by a perfect spotter call from his dedicated shooting partner, Specialist Davis. 5 shots, 5 hits. His grouping was exceptional, less than 6 inches at 2,400 meters. He stood up, making sure to catch Maya's eye. "That's how it's done, Chen, but don't worry, I'm sure you'll do fine for an amateur." Maya ignored the comment, focusing on her pre-shot routine. But as she settled into position with Lucas spotting for her, she noticed something odd. The wind flags downrange were showing different readings than her handheld anemometer suggested. Not dramatically different, but enough to matter at this distance. "Wind's reading strange," Lucas whispered. 5 knots on our gauge, but the flags are showing more like 7, maybe 8. Maya frowned. At 2,400 meters, a 3-knot miscalculation could mean a complete miss. She studied the environment carefully, trying to understand the discrepancy. Then she saw it, barely visible unless you knew to look for it. Someone had repositioned one of the mid-range wind flags, moving it from an open area into a slight depression where ground terrain would shelter it from the prevailing wind. The flag's reduced movement made it appear that wind speeds were lower than they actually were. It was subtle, deniable, and absolutely deliberate sabotage. Maya's jaw clenched. She could call it out, but without proof of who moved the flag, it would look like excuse-making before she'd even shot. Better to simply compensate for the real wind conditions and let her performance speak. "Ignore the mid-range flag," she told Lucas. "Calculate based on our anemometer and the far flags only." "You sure?" "Positive." Maya ran her calculations using the higher wind speed estimate. It meant a significant adjustment, almost 2 additional clicks of windage. If she was wrong, she'd miss badly. If she was right, she'd expose the sabotage without saying a word. First shot. She'd aimed for center mass but compensated heavily for wind. The shot felt good leaving the barrel. Hit, center mass. The range safety officer's call confirmed her calculation. 4 more shots followed, each one adjusted for the real wind conditions rather than the false reading from the tampered flag. Maya's breathing was steady, her calculations precise, her trigger control flawless. Hit center mass. Hit center mass. Hit center mass. Hit center mass. 545, with a grouping that actually beat Kane's by half an inch. As Maya cleared her weapon and stood, Master Sergeant Dalton walked down range to inspect the wind flags. He spent several minutes examining them, then pulled out his own anemometer to verify current conditions. When he returned, his expression was thunderous. "Somebody moved flag 3, he announced to the assembled candidates. "It's been repositioned to give false wind readings. That's not just poor sportsmanship, that's sabotage that could get people killed in combat conditions. If I find out who did this, they're gone from this program. Immediately." Every eye turned toward Kane, though no one spoke. He stared straight ahead, his face an unreadable mask, but a muscle twitched in his jaw. Dalton continued, "Chen, you compensated correctly despite the bad data. That shows field awareness and adaptive thinking. Outstanding performance." For the first time since arriving at Fort Benning, Maya saw something in Dalton's eyes that looked almost like respect. That evening, as candidates cleaned their equipment, Private Lucas approached Maya with concern written across his face. "He's escalating, moving flags, tampering with gear. What's next?" "I don't know," Maya admitted quietly. "But we're so close to finals, I just need to keep my head down and—" "No," Lucas's intensity surprised her. "You need to do the opposite. You need to dominate so completely that his sabotage becomes irrelevant. You need to attempt the extreme range challenge and succeed where he fails." Maya had been agonizing over this decision for weeks. The extreme range challenge was optional. She could qualify at the top of her class without it. Attempting and failing could damage her final ranking and give doubters ammunition. But succeeding would cement her legacy beyond any question. "You really think I should do it?" Lucas pulled out his notebook, now filled with weeks of accumulated data, wind patterns at different times of day, temperature variations, humidity cycles, even the specific ballistic performance of their issued ammunition lot. "We've been preparing for this since week 4. You've run the calculations 1,000 times. Your fundamentals are better than anyone's here, including Kane. The question isn't whether you can do it technically." "Then what's the question?" "Whether you're willing to risk public failure to achieve something extraordinary." Maya thought about her father's words, about Captain Rodriguez's story of being the first woman through Marine sniper training, about every barrier she'd already broken just to reach this point. "I'm doing it," she said finally. "The extreme range challenge, I'm attempting it." Lucas grinned. "Good, because I already started logging environmental data for likely qualification day conditions. Look at this." He opened his notebook to detailed charts. "For the past 3 weeks, I've been recording atmospheric conditions at the time of day they'll probably run the challenge. There's a pattern: temperature, humidity, wind direction. It's not random. We can predict likely conditions and prepare specific solutions." They spent the next 2 hours in the empty classroom, building probability models for various scenarios. If wind came from the east at 8 knots, Maya would need X adjustment. If temperature was above 75 degrees, Y compensation. They created decision trees, mental shortcuts, anything that would shave precious seconds off her calculation time when it mattered most. Around 2300 hours, Captain Rodriguez appeared in the classroom doorway. "You two ever sleep?" They both jumped to attention, but she waved them down. "Relax, I'm not here officially." She walked to their whiteboards, studying the complex calculations covering every surface. 3,248 meters. You're really going for it." "Yes, ma'am," Maya confirmed. Rodriguez studied the math for a long moment. "The ballistics are sound. Your environmental modeling is actually more sophisticated than what I used when I attempted long-range qualifications." She turned to face Maya directly. "But you understand what you're up against. Kane's going to attempt it too." He announced it publicly, which means his ego is committed. If you both attempt it and he succeeds while you fail, it undermines everything you've accomplished. And if we both succeed, then you've proven you're equals at the highest level, which, given the current climate, probably still gets interpreted as him being slightly better because of unconscious bias. Rodriguez's expression was sympathetic but realistic. I'm not trying to discourage you. I'm trying to make sure you understand the calculation isn't just ballistic, it's political, social, cultural. The odds are stacked and not in ways math can solve. Lucas spoke up unexpectedly. Ma'am, with respect, maybe that's exactly why she needs to do it. Because the next woman who comes through won't face odds quite this stacked. And the one after that will face even better odds. Somebody has to go first. Rodriguez smiled. Spoken like someone who actually gets it, Bennett. She turned back to Maya. All right, Chen, you want to attempt the impossible. Let me help. I've got data from the 3 successful extreme-range attempts in this program's history. Wind conditions, temperature, time of day, even the specific lot numbers of ammunition they used. Officially, I can't give you an advantage. Unofficially, I can make sure you've got the same information everyone else could access if they bothered to research it. She pulled a USB drive from her pocket. Everything's on here. Study it, learn from it, but understand, those 3 successful attempts, they were all done by male candidates who nobody questioned, nobody sabotaged, and nobody wanted to see fail. Your attempt will be different. The scrutiny will be intense. The pressure will be enormous. And there's a non-zero chance that even if you succeed, people will find ways to minimize it. Then I'll just have to shoot so well they can't, Maya said quietly. Rodriguez handed her the USB drive. That's the right answer. Now get some sleep. Both of you. You can't shoot straight if you're exhausted, and finals start in less than 2 weeks. As Rodriguez left, Maya and Lucas looked at each other, the weight of what was coming settling over them like a heavy blanket. No turning back now, Lucas said. Was there ever? Maya replied. Outside the classroom window, in the darkness beyond the light spill, Corporal Kane watched the exchange he couldn't hear but could certainly interpret. Rodriguez giving Chen special attention, more late-night preparation, more evidence that standards were being bent to accommodate her. He pulled out his phone, typing a careful message to a contact he'd cultivated, a senior NCO in the training cadre who shared Kane's views on women in combat roles. The message was subtle, phrased as concern rather than accusation, seeing unusual coaching patterns. Recommend close observation during finals to ensure evaluation integrity. The response came quickly. Noted, will be watching. Kane smiled in the darkness. If Chen wanted to attempt the impossible, fine. Let her. He'd make sure that every aspect of her performance was scrutinized, questioned, and held to standards that no one else had to meet. And when she failed, because at 3,200 meters, everyone eventually failed, he'd be there to make sure everyone remembered it. The final battle was set. In 12 days, everything would be decided. Qualification day arrived with weather so perfect it seemed scripted. The Georgia sky was cloudless and crystal blue, the temperature a comfortable 68 degrees, with winds steady at 5 knots from the east. Atmospheric pressure sat at a stable 30.12 inches. For shooters, these were dream conditions, the kind you hoped for but rarely received. Maya woke at 400 hours, though sleep had been elusive. Her mind had spent the night running calculations, reviewing scenarios, playing out every possible outcome of what was coming. She dressed in silence, checked her equipment for the dozenth time, and stepped outside for a final pre-dawn run to settle her nerves. Lucas was already there, waiting by the pull-up bars. Couldn't sleep either, she asked. Are you kidding? Today's the day you make history, no pressure. His grin was forced, betraying his own anxiety. They ran together in silence, boots crunching on gravel, breath forming small clouds in the cool morning air. Neither spoke about the extreme range challenge directly. It felt too enormous to discuss, like nomming it might jinx the whole endeavor. By 600 hours, all 14 remaining candidates stood in formation outside the range complex. Master Sergeant Dalton addressed them with uncharacteristic solemnity. "Gentlemen and Chen, you've survived 8 weeks of the most demanding sniper training the Army offers. Today, you'll demonstrate everything you've learned. Standard qualifications run from 800 through 1600 hours. 800 meters, 1200, 1600, 2000, and 2400. You must qualify at each distance to pass the course." He paused, his gray eyes scanning the formation. "After standard quals are complete, we'll conduct the optional extreme range challenge for those who have indicated interest. 3,248 meters, beyond military engagement doctrine, beyond what most of you will ever attempt in your careers. Only Corporal Kane has officially declared intent to attempt it." Maya felt every eye shift toward her, waiting for her to announce, but she remained silent, face impassive. Let them wonder. The morning qualifications proceeded with mechanical precision. Candidates rotated through distances in assigned order, their performances documented by multiple evaluators to ensure absolute objectivity. Maya shot consistently well. At 800 meters 545 with a 4-inch grouping. At 1200 445, one round caught a sudden wind gust. At 1600 545. The pattern continued through 2,000 and 2,400 meters. Her fundamentals were flawless, her calculations precise, her nerves steady. Kane matched her shot for shot. At each distance, he delivered textbook performance, his decades of experience and natural talent combining into displays of technical mastery. His supporters cheered each successful shot, making sure everyone knew the Golden Boy was maintaining his standard. By 1500 hours, the standard qualifications were complete. 12 candidates had passed all distances and officially qualified as Army snipers. 2 had failed, washing out after 8 weeks of brutal training with nothing to show for it but the experience. Maya finished second overall in the final rankings, just half a percentage point behind Kane. It was an incredible achievement, the highest any woman had ever scored in the program. She should have been celebrating. But everyone knew the real test was still coming. Master Sergeant Dalton gathered the qualified candidates. 12 of you are now officially certified Army snipers. Congratulations. Your graduation ceremony will be Friday at 1,000 hours. He paused meaningfully. However, we still have the matter of the extreme range challenge. Corporal Kane has declared his intent to attempt it. Anyone else? The silence stretched. Every candidate knew Maya had been preparing, but she'd never officially committed. This was the moment of truth. Announce publicly and face the pressure, or withdraw quietly and protect her second-place ranking. Maya stepped forward. "I'd like to attempt the challenge, Master Sergeant." The reaction was immediate. Whispers rippled through the gathered crowd of candidates and observers. Kane's expression flickered from surprise to anger to something darker, grim determination. Captain Rodriguez, observing from the tower, allowed herself a small smile. Dalton nodded once. "Very well. Kane, you'll shoot first as the senior candidate. Chen, you'll follow. You each get 3 rounds. The target is IPSC standard torso at 3,248 meters. Current conditions are posted. You'll have 15 minutes to prepare before we begin. Dismissed to preparation." Maya walked to the equipment area where Lucas waited with her rifle, already cleaned and prepared. Her hands were steady as she began her pre-shot routine, but her heart hammered against her ribs. "He's going to shoot well," Lucas said quietly, handing her the ballistic calculator. "Kane's got the experience, the natural talent, and the ego investment to make this work." "I know. But you've got something he doesn't." "What's that?" Lucas tapped the side of his head. "You've got the math. You've studied this shot for 6 weeks. You know the ballistics better than anyone here, probably better than Dalton himself. Trust that." Maya ran her calculations one final time. Distance, 3,248 meters, just over 2 miles. Bullet flight time, 3.72 seconds. Elevation drop, 36.4 feet. Wind drift at current 5 knots east, 11.2 feet. Temperature 68 degrees, humidity 42%, barometric pressure 30.12 inches and stable. She input every variable, cross-checked her work, verified with the environmental conditions one last time. The mathematics were elegant, precise, unforgiving. At this distance, everything mattered. A single miscalculation of even half a degree could mean a complete miss. 15 minutes passed like 15 seconds. "Corporal Kane, you're up," Dalton announced. The range fell silent as Kane approached the firing line. He carried himself with absolute confidence, the Barrett rifle looking almost small in his powerful grip. He'd been talking about this moment for weeks, letting everyone know he'd studied the 3 previous successful attempts, that he understood what it took. Kane settled into position with practiced efficiency. His spotter, Specialist Davis, called out environmental conditions. Kane made his adjustments, settled his breathing, and prepared to fire. The crowd held its collective breath. Kane's first shot thundered across the range. The massive .50 caliber round screamed downrange, covering the distance in just under 4 seconds. Through spotting scopes, evaluators tracked its flight path. "Miss," the range safety officer called. "Impact left approximately 8 feet. Kane's jaw tightened. He'd miscalculated the wind drift. He chambered another round, made a hasty correction, and fired again. "Miss, impact right 6 feet. He'd overcorrected, 1 round remaining. Kane took longer on this one, clearly struggling with the pressure. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool temperature. Finally, he fired. The silence seemed to last forever. "Miss, impact low 4 feet. 043, Kane had failed. He stood slowly, his face a mask of controlled fury. As he walked from the firing line, he didn't look at anyone. His supporters stood in shocked silence. The Golden Boy had been defeated by simple physics and pressure. "Chen, you're up," Dalton called. Maya approached the line, feeling the weight of every stare. This was it. The moment that would define not just her career, but potentially influence military policy, change perceptions, and impact every woman who followed her into this field. No pressure at all. She settled into position, the Barrett stock fitting against her shoulder like an old friend. Lucas took position as her spotter, notebook open to the detailed calculations they'd prepared. "Wind steady at 5 knots east," Lucas reported calmly. "Temperature 68.3, humidity 42%, pressure stable at 30.12. Your calculations are good." Maya peered through the scope. At 3,200 meters, the target was barely visible, a small shape shimmering in the distance like a mirage. She ran through her mental checklist one final time. Elevation, adjusted for 36.4 feet of drop. Windage, 11.2 feet of drift, plus the half-foot correction for wind shear she'd observed during earlier qualifications. Coriolis effect. At this distance and latitude, the Earth's rotation would drift the round approximately 4 inches right. Temperature and humidity, accounted for in the ballistic calculator. Everything was as perfect as she could make it. Now it came down to execution, breath control, trigger discipline, and the courage to trust her preparation. Maya's breathing slowed, in for 4 counts, hold for 2, out for 4 counts. Her heart rate dropped from anxious to calm. The world narrowed until nothing existed except her, the rifle, and that distant target. Between heartbeats, in that perfect moment of stillness, her finger began its slow, steady press on the trigger. The Barrett roared. The recoil slammed into her shoulder, but she'd braced perfectly. Through the scope, she tracked the bullet's flight path as best she could, though at this distance it was more instinct than observation. 3.72 seconds of eternity. The radio crackled with the range safety officer's voice, and in that moment before he spoke, Maya's entire future hung in the balance. Hit. The word came through clearly, definitively. Hit center mass. Time seemed to stop. Then the range erupted. Candidates who'd been silent moments before now shouted in disbelief and excitement. Lucas grabbed Maya's shoulder, grinning like a madman. Even some of Kane's supporters looked grudgingly impressed. But Maya didn't celebrate. Not yet. One hit could be luck. She needed confirmation. Steady, she whispered to herself, chambering the second round. She ran her calculations again, checking for any environmental changes in the last minute. The wind had picked up slightly, 5.2 knots now instead of 5 even. She made a micro-adjustment, just a quarter click of windage. Second shot, same perfect breathing, same smooth trigger press, same earth-shaking roar of the Barrett. Another 3.72 seconds of waiting. Hit center mass. Now people were standing, pointing, unable to believe what they were witnessing. 2 consecutive hits at 3,200 meters, something only a handful of military snipers in history had accomplished. Maya had 1 round left. The smart play was to stop here. 2 hits was already extraordinary. But she'd spent 6 weeks preparing for this moment, and she wanted to remove all doubt, all possibility of dismissing her success as fortunate. Third round, final confirmation. She checked the wind flags one last time, noticed a slight shift in direction, now coming from the east-northeast instead of due east. The change was minimal, but at this distance, minimal meant everything. Maya made her adjustment, settled her breathing, and for the third time executed perfect technique. The Barrett's report echoed across the range. 3.72 seconds. Hit center mass. The range exploded with noise. Candidates rushed forward, protocol forgotten in the moment's excitement. Captain Rodriguez sprinted down from the observation tower, her professional composure cracking into a brilliant smile. Master Sergeant Dalton walked to the spotting scope to verify personally. He looked for a long moment, then turned to the assembled crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," his gravel voice carried across the range, Private First Class Maya Chen just accomplished something achieved by only 3 previous candidates in this program's 15-year history. 3 consecutive hits at 3,248 meters. This performance will be documented in the course records. He walked directly to Maya, who'd finally stood from the firing line, and extended his hand. "Chen, I was wrong about you. Dead wrong. You're not just qualified, you're exceptional." Maya shook his hand, hardly believing this was real. "Thank you, Master Sergeant." Nearby, Corporal Kane stood frozen, his face pale. His entire identity had been built on being the best, and in one afternoon he'd been surpassed by the person he'd spent 8 weeks trying to break. As the celebration continued around her, Maya caught Captain Rodriguez's eye. The captain nodded once, a gesture of recognition, pride, and acknowledgement of what this moment meant. Maya Chen had just rewritten the record books and left everyone, truly, speechless. The aftermath of Maya's extreme-range success unfolded in waves that rippled far beyond Fort Bennink's ranges. Within hours, word had spread throughout the base. By evening, the story had reached Army Times reporters. By the next morning, Maya's achievement was trending on military social media, with thousands of soldiers sharing, commenting, and debating what had just happened. The barracks that night was electric with energy. Candidates who'd remained neutral throughout training now approached Maya with genuine respect. Even some of Kane's supporters quietly acknowledged what they'd witnessed was extraordinary. But Kane himself had vanished immediately after the qualification, disappearing without a word to anyone. Master Sergeant Dalton found Maya in the equipment room, meticulously cleaning her rifle one final time. The Barrett M1 7 had been her companion through 8 weeks of hell, and she wanted to show it proper respect. "Chen," Dalton said, his gravelly voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "Got a minute?" "Yes, Master Sergeant." She set down her cleaning rod and stood at attention. At ease. He leaned against the workbench, studying her with those calculating gray eyes. "I owe you an apology. Not just for today, but for the whole damn course. When you stepped off that bus 8 weeks ago, I looked at you and saw a problem to be managed, not a soldier to be trained. I gave you every opportunity to quit because I genuinely believed you couldn't cut it." Maya started to respond, but he held up a hand. "Let me finish. I was wrong, not just wrong blind. You didn't just meet the standard, Chen, you exceeded it, that extreme range performance. I've been running this program for 6 years and I've never seen anything like it. Not from Kane, not from anyone." He paused, his scarred face showing something that might have been embarrassment. "You made me confront my own biases, and that's uncomfortable as hell, but necessary. So thank you for that, and I'm sorry it took me this long to see what was right in front of me." "Master Sergeant," Maya's voice caught slightly. "I appreciate that more than you know." Dalton nodded once, then his expression shifted to something more professional. "Now, the practical matters. Your performance today is going to attract attention, positive and negative. The Army's going to want to use you as a recruiting example. Media's going to want interviews. And there are going to be people, inside and outside the military, who will try to minimize what you accomplished or claim it was somehow artificial. I'm prepared for that, Master Sergeant." "Are you? Because this isn't just about shooting anymore. You're about to become a symbol, whether you want to be or not. Every woman trying to enter combat roles is going to be compared to you. Every argument about physical standards and capability is going to reference your name. That's a heavy burden for a private first class." Maya thought about Captain Rodriguez's warnings, about her father's guidance, about the long road that had brought her to this moment. "I didn't come here to be a symbol, Master Sergeant. I came here to be a sniper. But if my success makes the path easier for women who follow, I'll accept that responsibility." "Good answer." Dalton pushed off the workbench. "One more thing. I'm recommending you for the Distinguished Graduate Award. Highest marks in classroom instruction, second overall in practical scores, and the only candidate to successfully complete the Extreme Range Challenge this cycle. The award comes with automatic consideration for advanced schools and special operations assessment." Maya's eyes widened. The Distinguished Graduate Award was the program's highest honor, virtually guaranteeing fast-track career progression. "Master Sergeant, I thank you." "Don't thank me. You earned it. Now finish with that rifle and get some rest. Graduation's in 3 days and you're going to be busy." The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. Maya was summoned to the company headquarters, where she found Captain Sarah Rodriguez waiting with someone she didn't recognize, a colonel in dress uniform, her chest heavy with ribbons and badges. "Private Chen," Rodriguez said formally. "This is Colonel Patricia Hendricks, commanding officer of the Special Operations Recruiting Battalion." Maya snapped to attention. "Ma'am." Colonel Hendricks studied her with keen intelligence. "At ease, Private. I watched your qualification yesterday from the observation tower. Remarkable shooting. I've been a sniper for 17 years, and I've never successfully completed a 3,200-meter challenge. Most people never even attempt it." "Thank you, ma'am. Captain Rodriguez has been updating me on your progress throughout the course. Your ballistic scores, your adaptive problem-solving, your performance under pressure." Hendricks pulled a folder from her briefcase. "I'm here to offer you an opportunity. After you complete your initial sniper assignment, I'd like you to consider assessment for Delta Force selection. We need operators who can think and shoot at the highest levels. Your performance suggests you're capable of both." Maya felt like the air had been sucked from the room. Delta Force, the Army's most elite special operations unit. Women had only recently been allowed to attempt selection, and none had successfully completed the course yet. Ma'am, I'm honored, but I'm barely through sniper school. I don't have combat experience, I haven't. You have something more valuable than experience, Hendricks interrupted. You have demonstrated excellence under impossible pressure, the ability to overcome systematic doubt, and the mental toughness to attempt what everyone said was beyond you. Those qualities can't be taught. Combat skills can be. Think about it. You've got time to develop, deploy, and prove yourself operationally. But I wanted you to know the door is open. After the colonel left, Rodriguez sat down with Maya in the empty office. You understand what just happened. Delta's watching you. Special Operations is watching you. This goes far beyond just graduating sniper school. It's overwhelming, Maya admitted. It should be, but here's what I want you to remember. Rodriguez leaned forward intensely. 6 months from now, you're going to deploy with a sniper section. You'll be the new person, the unproven one, and probably the only woman. Some soldiers will doubt you until you prove yourself in combat. That's normal. What's not normal is the additional scrutiny you'll face. Every shot, every decision, every mistake will be magnified. How do I handle that? The same way you handled this course. With competence, professionalism, and by being so damn good that doubt becomes irrelevant. And remember, you're not doing this just for yourself anymore. You're opening doors. Graduation day arrived with military precision. 12 newly qualified Army snipers stood in formation, dress uniforms crisp, faces proud. Family members filled the viewing stands, cameras ready to capture the moment. Maya's father had flown in from Montana, his retired Ranger frame still ramrod straight in his suit. When Maya spotted him in the crowd, his eyes were suspiciously bright. Master Sergeant Dalton presented each graduate with their official sniper certification and the coveted sniper badge to wear on their uniform. When he reached Maya, he paused. Private First Class Maya Chen, distinguished graduate, Sniper Class 32026, first female graduate of the Army Sniper Course to successfully complete the Extreme Range Challenge. He pinned the badge on her uniform, then lowered his voice so only she could hear. Go prove me wrong about everything else I think is impossible. Maya smiled. Yes, Master Sergeant. The ceremony concluded with the traditional group photo, 12 snipers, arms linked, representing the future of precision marksmanship. Maya stood in the front row, no longer the outsider, no longer the question mark, just a soldier who could shoot. Afterward, her father wrapped her in a bear hug that lifted her off her feet. 3,200 meters, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Maya, I'm so proud I can't even find words. I had a good teacher. I taught you fundamentals, you taught yourself excellence. He pulled back, holding her shoulders. So what's next? Maya thought about Colonel Hendricks' offer, about the deployment ahead, about all the challenges still waiting. Next, I go to work. Real snipers prove themselves in combat, not just on ranges. That's my girl. As the crowd dispersed, Maya noticed Corporal Derek Kane standing alone by the equipment shed, watching the celebration from a distance. Their eyes met across the parade ground. For a moment, she expected anger or resentment. Instead, Kane walked over, his expression unreadable. When he reached her, he extended his hand. Chen, what you did yesterday was legit. I've been shooting my whole life, deployed twice, and I couldn't make that shot. You did, 3 times. He paused, clearly struggling with words. I spent this whole course trying to prove you didn't belong here. I was wrong. You earned this more than most of us. Maya shook his hand, seeing something in his face she'd never seen before. Genuine respect mixed with the humility of someone who'd confronted their own limitations. Thank you, Kane. That means a lot. He nodded once, then walked away. Lucas appeared at her elbow, grinning. Did Corporal Asshole just apologize? I think he did. Well, hell, you really did leave everyone speechless. 6 months later, Corporal Maya Chen deployed to Afghanistan with the 3rd Infantry Division Sniper Section. Her call sign, given by her team leader after her first combat engagement, was Atlas, not because she was physically strong like the mythological Titan, but because she carried the weight of precision on her shoulders. In her first deployment, she recorded 14 confirmed kills, including a 2,847-meter shot that saved a pinned-down infantry platoon. The shot was documented, verified, and studied by sniper instructors across the military. Her teammates stopped seeing her gender after the first month. They saw what mattered, a sniper who could make impossible shots when lives depended on it. Back at Fort Benning, Master Sergeant Dalton updated the Extreme Range Challenge record board. 4 names now appeared, 3 men who'd completed it over 15 years, and 1 woman who'd done it on her first attempt. Below Maya's name, Dalton added a notation that would stay on that board for years to come. 3 consecutive hits, perfect execution under pressure, new course record. In training classrooms, instructors now used Maya's qualification performance as a teaching example. The footage of her extreme range attempt was shown to every new sniper class, accompanied by detailed breakdowns of her calculations, her technique, her mental discipline. And in recruiting offices across the country, when young women asked if they could become Army snipers, recruiters no longer hesitated. They pulled up Maya's story and said simply, "If you're willing to work harder than you've ever worked, if you can handle doubt and pressure and people telling you it's impossible, then yes, there's a path, and someone's already walked it." Maya Chen had arrived at Fort Benning as a question mark, an uncertainty, a soldier too weak to shoot. She left as proof, undeniable, documented, permanent proof, that excellence has no gender requirement. And she'd done it by leaving everyone, from the first day to the last, absolutely speechless. The end. Epilogue. 3 years after graduation, Captain Maya Chen, promoted early due to exceptional performance, returned to Fort Benning as an instructor in the same sniper program she'd once barely survived. On her first day teaching, she stood before a class of 25 candidates, 24 men and 1 woman. The woman looked small, uncertain, clearly wondering if she belonged. Maya caught her eye and smiled. "Welcome to Army Sniper School," she began. "Some of you are probably wondering if you have what it takes to be here. Let me save you the suspense. If you're willing to outwork everyone, if you trust mathematics over ego, and if you refuse to quit when it gets impossible, you belong here. I don't care what you look like or where you're from. I care if you can make the shot when it matters." She paused, letting that sink in. "Now let's find out who you really are." The course had changed. Standards remained rigorous, but doubt about capability based on anything except performance had been systematically eliminated. Maya Chen had done more than graduate sniper school or complete an impossible challenge. She'd changed what was possible. And that legacy would echo through generations of soldiers who'd never face quite the same barriers, never hear quite the same doubts, never feel quite so alone, because someone had walked the path first and proven it could be done. The question, too weak to shoot, had been answered definitively, with 3 perfect shots at 3,248 meters. End.